Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into one of the biggest matchups in the tech world. It's a real heavyweight bout for the back end, a debate that's been raging for years. In one corner we have the reigning, defending champion, Node.js, and in the other, the powerful, up-and-coming challenger, Go.
So the big question is, who actually wins this back-end battle? Is there a clear knockout winner? Well, by the time we're done here, you're going to know exactly which one to bet on for your next project. So, let's get into it.
Okay, but before our fighters touch gloves, we gotta understand the ring they're fighting in. Let's talk about the back-end battlefield.
You know, when you use an app, you're really only seeing the tip of the iceberg. The back end, well, that's everything happening behind the scenes. It's the engine, the kitchen, the brains of the operation. It's handling all the important stuff. Your data, all the complex logic, the APIs. It's literally everything you don't see. But without it, nothing works. It's that simple.
All right, first up, let's meet the champion. This one's a household name, a dominant force that's been on top of the web development world for years. Introducing Node.js.
So what exactly is Node.js? Well, think about it like this. For the longest time, JavaScript was kind of trapped inside your web browser. It was the language that made websites interactive. But then Node.js came along, built on Google's super-fast V8 engine, and it did something revolutionary. It let JavaScript run on the server. It broke it out of jail. And that was a huge deal because suddenly, developers could use the same language for everything, front to back.
So what's its secret weapon? How is it so fast? It all comes down to its core philosophy. It's event-driven and has this thing called a non-blocking I/O model. Now that sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. Imagine a barista at a coffee shop. Instead of making one person's complicated latte and waiting for it to finish before even looking at the next person, they'd start the first latte, and while it's brewing, they take the next person's order, and the next. That's Node.js. It juggles tons of requests at once without getting bogged down, which is why it's absolutely perfect for real-time stuff like chat apps or streaming platforms.
And look, the proof is in the pudding. People love this thing. Now, you might see that number, 2%, and think, meh, that's not that much. But you got to remember, we're talking about the entire internet. In a world with dozens and dozens of server-side technologies, grabbing a 2% slice is massive. That's millions of websites. Go, by comparison, is still way, way smaller. This really drives home why we're calling Node.js the reigning champion.
But you know how it is? Every champion eventually meets their match. A new challenger always appears. And this one comes from some pretty serious pedigree. Let's talk about Go.
So Go, or Golang as you'll often hear it called, was born inside Google back in 2009. And you have to think about the kinds of problems Google deals with. We're talking about systems at a scale that is just mind-boggling. They needed a language that was simple, super efficient, and built for a world of massive, interconnected services. So they built one from scratch.
And Go's philosophy is totally different from Node's. It's all about raw power and simplicity. Its biggest claim to fame is that it's built for concurrency. That's just a fancy way of saying it's amazing at doing a whole bunch of things at the exact same time. It's also statically typed, which means it's kind of like having a proofreader check your code for silly mistakes before you run it, which is a huge safety net. And finally, it's compiled, which means it gets turned into pure machine code, making it ridiculously fast.
Okay, so we know our fighters, we've seen their stats. Now it's time for the main event. Let's put them head-to-head and see how they stack up on the most important points. Okay, first round, pure, raw performance. Speed. This is where you really see the difference. Think of it this way. Go is like a book that's been perfectly translated into another language ahead of time. You just open it and read, it's instant. That's because it's compiled directly to machine code. Node.js, on the other hand, is like having a live interpreter translating a speech as it's happening. It's really, really fast and smart, but it's never going to be as fast as just reading the pre-translated book. So in a drag race, Go almost always wins.
All right, next up, concurrency. How well do they juggle? We talked about Node's single, super efficient barista. It works great, but Go was born for this. It has something called Go routines. Imagine instead of one barista, you have an entire army of them, and they're all super cheap to hire and they work together perfectly. You can literally create thousands, even millions of these little workers to tackle tasks all at the same time. For truly massive, parallel jobs, Go is just an absolute monster.
But, you know, speed isn't everything. What's it actually like to use these things? Well, this is where Node.js lands a massive punch. Why? Because millions upon millions of developers already know JavaScript.
The barrier to entry is just super low. If you're a web developer, you can probably start building a Node.js backend today. Go, on the other hand, is a new language you have to learn. Now, it's designed to be simple and clean, and its safety features are a huge plus, but you still got to learn it. So Node is easier to get started with, for sure.
Okay, let's just lay it all out there. The pros and cons, side by side. You can see the story pretty clearly. With Node.js, you get the massive community, it's easy to get started if you know JavaScript, and it's great for scalable apps. The downside? Well, that JavaScript flexibility can sometimes make debugging a nightmare. Go, on the other hand, gives you that insane performance, built-in concurrency, and the safety net from Google. But the community is smaller, and you might find yourself writing a bit more code to get simple things done. It's a classic trade-off, speed of development versus speed of execution.
Okay, that's all theory, but who's actually putting their money where their mouth is? Let's look at the big companies backing each of our fighters.
In the Node.js corner, you've got some absolute titans. We're talking Uber, Google, the BBC, Medium. I mean, these are huge names. Companies like Uber need that real-time capability Node is famous for. And yeah, you saw that right. Google, the company that made Go, uses a ton of Node.js. That just proves there's no single right answer. It's always about the right tool for the job.
And what about Go? Well, its corner is just as impressive. Netflix, eBay, PayPal, LinkedIn, these are companies that live and die by performance and reliability at a massive scale. For a company like Netflix, which is juggling millions of streams at once, or PayPal processing countless transactions, that raw, compiled speed and killer concurrency model aren't just nice to have, they're absolutely essential.
So we've seen the fight, we've gone through the rounds, now it's time for the judge's decision. How do you pick your fighter? Look, it really boils down to this. You should pick Node.js if your number one goal is getting something built fast. If you're making a real-time streaming app, or if your team is already a bunch of JavaScript wizards, Node is your guy. But you should pick Go if what you care about most is raw performance and rock-solid reliability. If you're building complex microservices, or anything that needs to handle a ton of stuff at once without breaking a sweat, then Go is your champion.
And that really leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Which of these languages is going to build the future of the internet? On one hand, you have Node.js, the established champ that lets you build and innovate at lightning speed. And on the other, you have Go, the challenger built for pure, unadulterated performance and scale. The truth is, they'll probably both play a huge role. But which philosophy will win out in the end? The one that gets ideas out the door fastest or the one that runs the fastest? That's something to think about. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.